It's the After Show with TelecomTV's Guy Daniels and Ray Lemaitre.
Yes, we're back. The After Show has returned just in time to round out our coverage of MWC Barcelona. I'm Guy Daniels, and this is the final programme of our Spotlight on 5G series, at least for this year. Don't forget that all of our videos, including the Daily Slice, the CSP interviews and our full industry coverage, are available to watch on demand. Well, joining me for the After Show is TelecomTV's editorial director, Ray Lemaitre. Ray, my expectations for this year's MWC were kind of average. I sort of expected the same energy, news output and pomp as last year. But before we dive into the details, what were your expectations?
Well, Guy, my expectations were for a lot of people, check. A large focus on AI, and that was inescapable at the show this year. And the usual general industry optimism. What I hoped for were some, at least a few hints at some answers to some of the major existential questions facing the industry. And I'm not sure we got those at the end, but, you know, that's just my view.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we're about to get some more views because we've invited several guests to help us dissect MWC 24. Quite a few guests, in fact. And together we shall peer into the telecom entrails and discern some profound meaning. So let's now introduce them, starting with Sandeep Phadke, who is SVP and Head of Europe, Communications, Media, Entertainment and Technology Business with Tech Mahindra. Salman Tariq, Vice President EMEA for Optiva. Francis Haysom, Principal Analyst with Appledore Research. David Boswarthick, Director of New Technologies at ETSI. Paul Miller, Chief Technology Officer for Wind River. Ian Hood, Chief Strategist, Global Industries at Red Hat. And Andrew Border, Head of Product for Telco Solutions for Hewlett Packard Enterprise. Hello everyone, great to see you all. What a packed show we have. Well, Ray and I have identified a number of topics around MWC, and we've also applied some rigorous scientific analysis to get the discussion started.
Yes, we have, Guy. It's the Magnificent Seven. 7 topics, and we have rated them. We have given our marks out of 10 for pre-show expectations and also for post-show in retrospect. So what we thought about before the show and what we thought about it afterwards. So let's get started with topic number 1, and that's the overall MWC 24 experience. So here are our marks for our expectations and in retrospect. That gives you a sense of what we were thinking ahead of the show and how we're feeling now that it's all over. And, you know, we were okay going in, and actually we came out feeling pretty good about the show overall. But what do our guests think? Let's start with Sandeep. Sandeep, what are your overall feelings about MWC 24? Did it live up to your expectations?
Oh, absolutely. From my perspective, this was probably one of the biggest show ever. I've been going to MWC for the last 15 years. The stands were full. The networking was absolutely fantastic. And the show was all about AI, 1, 2, and 3. So from that standpoint, it lived up to my expectations. We had some phenomenal conversations. We saw a lot of people coming up with some good ideas. But from my standpoint, you know, the most important thing about this MWC was it was very grounded. It was not about people talking about extravagant things. It was very grounded. It was about how do I make sure that from a telecom operator standpoint, you know, we are able to address the cost to serve customers, the time to market, and where do we get the new set of revenues. So from that standpoint, very, very excited about this year's MWC and great set of follow-on actions that all of us have carried back home.
Really, I was expecting a very busy show, but quite frankly, the buzz and the excitement at the event was well above my expectations in terms of the number of meetings with our customers and partners. So overall, I thought it was quite a good experience this time around.
Yeah, I'd agree with that assessment. We were really pleased actually with the number of meetings we had booked with customers. There was a real intensity, I think, around projects that customers are looking to get started. And yeah, as someone who hadn't been to MWC for a couple of years, I was really pleased just to see the intensity and energy on the showroom, on the trade room floor, and just to see the industry really coming back pretty strongly, I think.
Yeah, I mean, the show was buzzing, and it was fantastic sunshine the 4 days. And I think the sunshine is a bit reflective of what we see as an industry, right? So all the investments that have gone into these networks, there seems to be some concrete work and some concrete signs visible how to monetize those investments, right? One of the observation I had coming into the show for many years was that this show is transforming from a core telco show to a tech show, which is great, because you could see already a lot of adjacent industries coming in and using telco as a platform to build solutions to add value in their ecosystems. So overall, it was great, it was buzzing, and we took a lot of great conversations and learnings from the show, which we will use in our business. Yeah.
It's really interesting. I've been going to MWC for well over 10 years. I won't date myself, but I think this year was the first year we returned to pre-COVID levels, right? It's taken some time to recover from that. Cracking the 100,000 attendee number is pretty significant. It was a very high scale show, and it was really demonstrated on the booths. We had packed standing room only for 4 days. As the others have mentioned, a tremendous amount of meetings with our customers, potential customers, and important partners. A lot of interesting demonstrations with new technology, including artificial intelligence and connected vehicles. So it was a very, very hot show, and tremendous amount of traffic and interest in the things that were going on this year in telecom. So pretty exciting to see that, and certainly did exceed our expectations.
Yeah, have to agree. It was a very busy event, busier than I expected. Already we saw post-COVID that we were ramping up and seeing more and more people hitting the show. This year, I think it was a record year, and you could feel it in the various halls and trying to walk from hall 1 to hall 8. There was a lot of energy, a lot of people, and the topics were very, as it was said, grounded. It's about what is 5G doing now? How can we get value from 5G? What are the products and the services which the customers need now? It was a very now event as opposed to a more future-looking event. So that was refreshing. The energy levels were really high. Lots of really good meetings throughout the 4 days, and a lot of innovation coming up from the shop floor as well. There was a lot of research going on in the background, people looking at innovative products that are coming out of European research or UK funded research. So 5G was the story, and the future was sort of the hidden promise in the back layers.
I think the good news is there's some great tech out there to support, that is there now, that can support the telcos in their ambition. The slight quibble I would have is that I think the telcos are still in a position of actually working out what they want to be, what kind of organizations they want to be. There's a kind of yin and yang, I guess, between being really great connectivity providers, that utility route that they could be taking, and the sort of wider opportunities as a wider DSP. And I think I think there's an important choice that is coming up. But the key thing is the show was showing there's lots of good techers out there.
So overall, pretty positive feedback there on the MWC 24 experience. So let's move on to our next topic. Over to you, Guy.
Thanks very much, Ray. Well, our next topic is AI, and we're bundling in ML as a bit of a bonus. So the TelecomTV gave marks for our pre-show expectations and post-show in retrospect, and here they are. We were very bullish going into the show and pretty much the same coming out, just a little bit down. But what do our guests think? And let's start with Salman.
Yeah, so there was a lot of AI. You could not escape AI. So every tech player, whether it's a carrier, a device player, a software player, they had AI as a theme. That was quite evident. And I thought there was a good mix of AI fantasy versus real use cases. And I think both are good because fantasy sets that vision. So we are dreaming big things with AI, which is a great platform, right? But if you ground it and you for me, the biggest observation was if you look at AI last year versus AI this year, I mean, you can see the maturity curve and the growth curve compared to all other things that we've been seeing in telco. It is growing at a much faster, rapid pace than other technologies. I think if we continue to see this trend, then there'll be more concrete use cases which can add value to telcos, right? Um, some fascinating things we saw in AI. I mean, for me, a good observation was a company called Humane, which is also a partner to us. So I think they are, with their AI PIN device, they're giving rise to a complete new set of carriers, which is device-centric kind of carriers. So those kind of use cases we see, and they were pretty exciting. And I think one more proof point of AI getting mainstream is the fact that we are now starting to talk about real life challenges of AI. I think there was a lot of conversation around open source LLMs, security, zero trust. I mean, how do you get it right? So this is a good reflection of AI getting mainstream and concrete in telcos, which is a good sign.
Yep, have to agree. AI was everywhere. It was omnipresent on almost every stand. Luckily, we could escape it in the corridors. It was as though we've taken 2023 Mobile World Congress and stuck AI and ML on every stand in every presentation. But saying that, what AI was or what AI is and how it was defined wasn't too clear. There was a lot of generative AI, so sort of using AI to generate content. There were AI-enabled robots and AI-enabled headsets and AI-enabled cars, but it wasn't really about telco AI. I always think of AI as network for AI, AR for network, and the network with AI. So what we try to do, at least in ETSI, is look at it from the sort of bottom up. AI is very powerful, but we need to ensure that it is secure and safe and trustworthy. So we have groups looking at AI security, TCSAI, and make sure that when AI is deployed massively in the network for network enhancements, it is trustable and it cannot run out of control. So AI certainly, but AI with a little bit of control and human interaction for sure.
Yeah, I think a couple of things really. Obviously, hot topic for all the vendors, and I think service providers. Interesting enough, the CSPs very much starting to position how they were thinking about bringing AI to their customers, which I think is an important turning point from HPE's point of view. Pretty big and important show for us. In a similar way, I had a product there that out of my group we were announcing around telco core automation, which is really around bringing assurance and orchestration together from an OSS point of view, but really leveraging AI and ML to do those inference-based decision-making points, which I think are going to be really important in terms of operating networks much more efficiently, particularly in a multi-domain, multi-vendor, multi-cloud type setup, which we're seeing a lot more traction around. I think obviously the big news from an HPE point of view was in Antonio's keynote, where he had Rami Rahim, the Juniper CEO, and really Antonio was laying out his vision around AI being frankly a generational opportunity, and one that he sees as incredibly important to service providers, because thinking about AI at scale, the service providers potentially have a massive advantage in terms of their globally deployed networks, because you don't want to be pulling this AI data all back centrally. So potentially working with service providers to be able to distribute AI and supercompute around the edge, leveraging partnerships with service providers, is a pretty exciting vision that Antonio laid out with Rami in their joint keynote.
Certainly a lot of different things going on, and what's interesting is we've all been sort of working with predictive analytics and AI for quite some time, and as you know, Red Hat comes at it from the open source side, and bring it in from the community perspective, including the enterprise nervous system for a federated AI. But this year at the World Congress, we kind of focused on taking a couple of aspects of it. One was bringing AI inference to the edge, and we work with NTT and Fujitsu to actually show that we could reduce the latency down to 2 milliseconds across an all-photonic network, and actually made it so that two musicians could play as if they were side by side, even though they're in the two different cities. Another one we had was to take real-time 360 video and using OpenShift at the edge for that AI inference and demonstrate those kind of capabilities. So we're really starting to see those kind of things. And then, of course, the important thing that we're seeing is using AI for two other things, which is the business outcomes for the customer, whether it's in agriculture, manufacturing, And we have a couple of partners in that category. And the last one, a topic that I think we saw in a lot of our partner booths and with us, was using AI and a new open source projects in the area of sustainability and our reducing our carbon footprints, especially in light of the fact that Open RAN, as it now comes to fruition, it becomes more real. We want to actually reduce that power from, rather than having the power full on the throttle, whether there's a traffic or not, we can actually see whether there is traffic, and we can turn down the boost on the processors, both on Intel, NVIDIA, and even ARM processors, and then down to the world of taking a shot at with software-defined memory, reducing power there as well. So another angle to take AI to drive improvements in the overall efficiency of the network.
Well, my initial perception is it should have been renamed AWC. It's AI World Congress, really. Everything was AI. Everything, as David said, has had AI strapped to it. I think there is obviously a degree of hype there, but we were able to see a number of interesting areas where AI, I think the difference between applying AI to anything, and particularly for us, the whole idea of the importance of AI as an enabler of automation in networks was evident in a couple of scenarios that we saw there. I'll make out call outs for the Rakuten and the Amdocs Gen AI interfaces onto the operational systems, where we really did see some kind of interesting behavior changes that could be made in an operator. I think there was also a degree of AI wash there. I think I was very saddened to see there was something very interesting from T-Mobile in terms of an AI-enabled phone, and I thought that there was quite an interesting business model that could come out of that one, and I was really disappointed to find that it was just a Gen AI on applications that consumers and enterprises have been using for 10 years. I think there was the real opportunity there to actually show a disruptive model to the existing application environment, and that seemed to be missed. So that was a slight disappointment there.
From my standpoint, I have met multiple telco CTIOs during the event, and there were two themes that were coming out very consistently. Number one, pretty much all the large European telcos were saying that AI is all about use cases, and especially in multi-opco operators, the usual Vodafones, Telefonicas of the world, there were the same set of use cases that were being developed within those operators in multiple countries. And there was a need for a consolidated view of how AI is going to look like for these telcos. So I think a clear top-down strategy for AI was super important for them, number one. And number two, multiple operators came back to us and said, for some of the large players in the industry, like Tech Mahindra, you have to come back and deliver on the promises that AI stands for today, and deliver it as part of an outcome and deliver it today. So that was a consistent message that I heard over the 3 or 4 days that I was there at MWC, and got me thinking, is it all about use cases, or should AI promise to deliver what is important for the business, and AI should be more outcome driven rather than use case driven.
I think a very interesting show for AI. We're finally seeing the emergence of it as a significant technology trend that people have high expectations for. It reminds me years ago when we started with Open RAN, right? And the belief that we've now gone several years and finally seen maturity of that technology. So I think we're early in the adoption curve of AI. We were actually able to demonstrate some powerful capabilities around AI and machine learning this year. For years, our customers have been using our analytics platform to do predictive outage avoidance and event correlation and root cause analysis, the things that machine learning and the large data pools of information that are coming from telco networks can be utilized for. And that really helps contribute to savings in OpEx. But this year, we were able to take an AI large language model and wrap it on top of our entire studio operator platform, which, as your listeners are aware, we use globally for Open RAN infrastructure. And that allowed a very interesting live demo where you could walk up to the AI and ask it normal questions. Are there any alarms in the systems? How do I solve these alarms? Can you provide a command to help solve this problem? And the AI is able to live interact with the APIs to the underlying systems and provide that assistance to the operator. And we think this has a really exciting future because the OpEx savings are incredible. You're able to do things in seconds that used to take hours or days to resolve with many, many individuals within the carrier. So pretty exciting technology, still early days though for the adoption of it.
Great comments there, everybody. Fantastic insights. Well, let's hand over to Ray for our next topic.
Okay, thanks, Guy. Our next topic in the Magnificent Seven is network APIs and the open gateway. So here are our marks for our expectations and in retrospect for network APIs. And as you can see, we were quite hopeful, but it didn't live up to our expectations. So let's find out what our guests think. Francis, let's come to you. What were your takeaways around the topic of network APIs at MWC 24?
My reaction was actually very similar to yours, Ray, that there's a lot of anticipation of what network APIs could be doing, particularly in terms of monetizing the huge investment in 5G that's coming from the network. But there does seem to be two sort of key gaps. I think as the APIs stray further and further away from what I would term is the sort of core existing business model of the telco, the commercialization seems to become a little bit more tenuous. So there's some very obvious applications like, for example, SIM swap detection and SIM to phone connection, which is information the telco already has. But what wider, I think the issue becomes one of it becomes an issue of what is the model, and also it becomes an issue of how do you engage with our global ecosystem of developers when that when you're actually providing parts of that ecosystem and APIs need to be available ubiquitously, but are being individually provided by operators. And I think that's where this story tends to break down. So I think the issue is going to be: do they lose to aggregators, the Twilios of the world, and how do they get that sort of ubiquitous engagement with the developer community? The jury is still out on that.
Yeah, so what I found was that, the Open Gateway and the APIs that come with it in the Chimera project in the open source world, we actually did hold a reception with the LFN and announced our participation as Red Hat does, to help govern the evolution of these APIs and expand them to support additional use cases beyond kind of the location SIM swap stuff that's been done by Telefonica, Tim Brazil, et cetera. But we actually had a partner on our own booth. I mentioned that 360 video effort we did. Well, that actually was taking advantage of those APIs for that location security of who that customer is. And we actually could use that same video stream at a venue where you're at in live stream, being able to monetize that by letting consumers of that service actually buy things as they flew by clicking on a QR code as they looked at that video going by. So I do see it starting to be a way to let developers build video experiences and other capabilities on top of these platforms. But certainly it's early days for the API community, for the telcos, in light of the fact that we have such a large collection of them. And we will need to add policy and governance to aggregate these, whether it's in the 5G network exposure function area or in the actual QoD type APIs.
Yeah, I think really my thoughts around it are a couple of things. One, I think the industry needs to look at what it takes to make successful API and developer communities. And I think if we look at examples of in the last 20 years of developing the API community, companies like Twilio, I think did a remarkable job in understanding what developers were looking for, which was an opportunity to simplify a really difficult technical problem, which enabled a business opportunity. And in the example of Twilio, it was basically, how do I connect anonymously a customer with an Uber driver through, SMS or voice messaging? And they simplified what would have been an incredibly difficult thing for an individual company to build themselves. And that requires a big investment in things like developer relations and understanding use cases and all of that. So I think it's really important that as we think about APIs in the telco environment, that we really should look at the best examples of how developer outreach works, and we make the use cases relevant for developers, because it's a big bridge that we have to make from the telco domain into general developers, and they can find those use cases. Certainly from our point of view, I think we're excited about the potential, once again, thinking about AI, thinking about putting supercompute and AI resources really at closer to the edge of the network, and being able to incorporate the massive amounts of data that telco operators have, and making that available through APIs, I think has a lot of potential. But I'd really urge the industry to look at what it takes to build successful developer communities, because it is hard work, and it's a discipline that's really been learned by companies like Twilio and others.
Yeah, there's certainly been great momentum with network APIs in the past year, and we saw some of that at MWC 24, but it's still a bit of a tangled web, a lot to work through there in terms of the whole ecosystem. Okay, let's go back over to Guy for our next topic.
Yeah, thanks, Ray. Well, our next topic is RAN evolution, and this covers Open RAN, vRAN, Cloud RAN, etc. So let's go and have a look at our marks for how we ranked this topic in terms of our expectations and in retrospect post-show. So we went in with pretty average expectations, but actually we were pleasantly surprised. But what do our guests think? Well, let's start with David. David, what was your takeaway from MWC on RAN evolution?
Yeah, well, there certainly was quite a large focus on RAN in MWC this year. In many of the stands and the demos we saw, there were lots of RAN products and demos. Very interestingly, it was about multi-RAN, so how to mix in 4G RAN, 5G RAN, whatever 6G RAN may be, non-terrestrial networks, Wi-Fi. So it's more about the integration of multiple RANs into an end-to-end system, as opposed to 5G RAN, 6G RAN, whatever that will be. So that was very interesting to see this approach of it's not just about one RAN, but it's about many RANs, and how to integrate it end to end was a really interesting takeaway from MWC this year. Open RAN, I didn't see too much of compared to last year, where it's really being pushed and a lot of industries talk. It was possibly in the shadow of AI, which was really everywhere. So definitely RAN is important, but I think realization that end-to-end mobile communications is not only about the RAN.
From my standpoint, all the discussions about Open RAN that I was part of, I think I would categorize it as cautiously optimistic. So most of the operators are looking at all the hype that has happened in the past about Open RAN and want to take a step back and look at what is actually happening in the market. There was a lot of talk about what Ericsson did with AT&T as part of the Open RAN announcement that they did a couple of months back, and how that will pan out into Europe was one very important topic. Plus, I see a lot of large operators like Orange, like Vodafone, committing themselves to Open RAN and having very ambitious plans of rollouts in the coming 2 or 3 years. So it's going to be an important space to look at. In addition, the discussion around whether there is a business case for Open RAN, yes or no, was very high on the agenda when you spoke to anyone about either a swap out with one of the Chinese vendors, or to go with a new technology like Rakuten or any other new technology player in the open RAN space.
Obviously, I feel like we finally get to take a breath as an industry. We've been working on virtual RAN and Open RAN for many, many years now, and it's taken a long time. Wind River contributed years ago the first open source O Cloud into the ORAN SC. We then worked with Verizon in their national deployment of 5G using virtual RAN. Eventually, as Open RAN emerged to be superior to virtual RAN, we won that first ever Open RAN call in UK with Vodafone and continue to deploy with them. And as we entered this show, we were proud and pleased to announce that we were selected by TELUS for Canada's first ever Open RAN deployment. So I believe we're finally getting to a tipping point, and we certainly have now years of deployment using this technology. So the technology is quite hardened and proven at scale. The operational skills to deploy it are now within the operator. We've reached that maturing point where it can be adopted globally by many service providers. And as a technology vendor, we've started to make some interesting investments. For example, we took, in partnership with Samsung and Juniper, and integrated their virtual cell site router onto the platform, eliminating yet another piece of hardware componentry at the cell site that drops TCO for the Open RAN approach and brings another component into a virtualized framework. We also work with Intel and our RAN partner Samsung with their VDU to dynamically adjust the power in the processor by adjusting frequency and core activation levels to dynamically adjust the power in the system. With lower traffic levels, you don't need to consume as much power. So a tremendous amount of innovation happening in addition to the AI that we spoke about a moment ago, that's really showing that the platform itself and the capability of Open RAN is now at scale and deployed and can be adopted globally. And we're now into that point where we're adding innovation upon innovation to drive even further improvements. And we do tend to believe that this is going to, take the market by storm at this point.
Yeah. So as with Paul, definitely believe that Open RAN is now real because we are at that production deployment kind of approach. And Verizon, as we know, is a dual vendor play. So they also have, Ericsson as well as Samsung using our platform on that side. And we are quite pleased that around the industry that the Cloud RAN, Open RAN choice for all the partners, Red Hat is becoming that default platform for them. And as well, the production deployments, we have a very large production deployment with Mavenir in India. And so as I say, we're starting to see that production kind of approach. And certainly, I mentioned earlier the sustainability approach, whether it's with Ericsson and Intel, NEC with ARM and Qualcomm, NVIDIA, we're taking that same approach of letting the acceleration technology and the improvement on the power side be applied across any sort of Linux and Kubernetes platform and drive that choice for the customers. And I think what we found in talking to those customers is that they're quite happy now that they have more choices in this arena, that they can pick and choose for certain markets, certain frequencies that they want to go after, and be able to actually drive that TCO down in this environment. So I'm quite excited to see Open RAN picking up again now that we've gone through a lot of these very difficult technology challenges that we've had in the last couple of years.
I think from my point of view, we saw the same sort of momentum, to be honest. I think, to be honest, in the customer meetings that I attended, we saw the whole range of projects, right? We still have customers still making first steps with vRAN, but lots of ORAN interest as well. And from my point of view, looking at the management of these deployments with our Rana solution, which really provides the management from a provisioning and an assurance point of view of these networks was exciting, and we're seeing a lot more attention being paid by operators, sort of saying, as these projects vRAN and ORAN become real, how do I manage both the assurance and orchestration aspects of those projects? And I think that's always a sign that things are becoming real when customers are really starting to focus on how they're going to manage those. And so we saw lots of energy there. I was actually surprised by the number of customer meetings we had, particularly with an ORAN focus. And so, I'd fully support my colleagues' comments that there's a lot of momentum there. And as I said, it's been a long-term investment by the industry, but I think we've turned the corner now and seeing real energy around it.
Yeah, thanks very much, everyone. Let's end this topic now and move on to the next one. Over to you, Ray.
Okay, thanks, Guy. Well, our next topic is a little bit related because it's 5G return on investment, or ROI. So a big topic for quite a long time now. Here are our marks for our expectations and in retrospect from MWC 24. And as you can see, we were hoping for a little bit more than what we got, but that was just a view of the TelecomTV team. Let's see what our guests think. Salman, let's start with you. Did you have much in the way of takeaways from MWC 24 on 5G return on investment?
So interestingly, I believe if you look at the event, 5G was taking a backseat against AI. That was pretty evident. And I thought there was a bit of acknowledgement as well from the tech companies that 5G did not live up to the initial potential everyone thought it would. And then again, you can argue 5G was overhyped from the beginning, which is fine. Yeah. But you could already see there's a conscious approach in now approaching what 5G could not solve is 5.5G, advanced 5G or 6G is going to solve that. And I think people are taking a more conscious approach on that, right? But then again, I remember a fascinating conversation with a Vodafone colleague said that, look, we're not going to wait for the next G. We have 5G, we have AI, and we can be more service-centric than a G-centric kind of a carrier. And we can start to build stuff on top of that. We don't need the next G to do that for us. I think that's the right approach. So there has to be much more done on 5G, and there's a lot of potential out there. On the consumer side of 5G, you could see that it has not delivered much in terms of uplifting revenues, but there are some good early successes on the enterprise side. Fixed wireless access 5G, I think it's taking off in a few markets. Private networks is another good example of how 5G is delivering value. So we need to build on those, but overall, a lot more work to be done on 5G.
The telcos need to decide what they want to be. A lot of the 5G monetization is about it's about enterprises using the capabilities of the network. And at the moment, we're still not getting what I would term is a high touch point with those enterprises. The primary product that is still being sold with 5G to enterprises is connectivity. We're going to see the need to be much more explicit about how you broaden or increase the footprint of that engagement with the enterprise. And telcos are doing that. They're becoming or trying to become SIs in that area. But I would say at the moment that kind of real engagement with particular industries, strong engagement, showing more than connectivity is not there. And that's going to be really the key point. APIs are going to be important in that area. The ability to integrate with other systems and deploy customized solutions is going to be important. And I think the final thing is actually just the telco's ability to partner with others and bring that expertise to bear on particular enterprise solutions. This is not something that telco can do alone.
From my standpoint, at a high level, I feel this is yet another G of wasted opportunities for telcos. Obviously, 5G was all about the enterprise, and I think we as an industry could have done way better in looking at what is it that 5G promises and how it can be beneficial for the industry and for the telcos. But that is in the past. What I have seen, several of the telcos now leveraging 5G. The common pattern of looking at how do you leverage the 5G return on investment is to look at what they call as tech hubs. For example, I've seen Proximus do a phenomenal work in what they call as a tech hub, which is essentially a marketplace where they have defined multiple use cases for the consumer as well as for the enterprises. I saw a very good use case in game as a service or something around drone as a service that they were able to put it up on the marketplace and give the opportunity for enterprises to consume that service going forward. So all in all, a lot of work to be done still on 5G, but from my standpoint, it's a wasted opportunity. The good news is, at least from a European standpoint, large parts of the 5G investment is already done. Probably fiber in some of the main markets will take another 2 or 3 years to complete. But somewhere around 2027, large parts of the investments in this is going to be finished. The large parts of the capex is going to be over. And probably we can have a better future for the industry after the capex investments are over.
This is really quite a challenge for the industry in finding a way to actually drive those business outcomes rather than trying to solve for, I'll call it the perfect use case to drive a real, strong, repeatable solution. So as I said, we found that in the agriculture space, we had a great partnership with AWS and TELUS Agriculture that we were working with. A manufacturing company that we have called Minsight, we work with them to solve some challenges in oil spills, safety, wildfires, these kinds of things. So we are starting to see very specific use cases. In fact, one of our customers has actually chosen to take MEC as a solution, and rather than going after the end enterprise, he's actually using MEC as a solution to improve the efficiency, if you will, of his CDN video solution, which fits right into the demonstration we did for real-time 360 video. So that's kind of where we're starting to see more and more of this coming our way, but it really has to get down to the maturity of the partner ecosystem and solving for those KPIs that really don't have a lot to do with networking, right? It's about better healthcare, better produce, better cars, more safe environments. That's kind of the thing that we have to translate our technologies into those things, and that's really kind of what's holding back kind of the drive forward to get that money back out of the investments in 5G.
As the industry has been really consumed with looking at 5G and Open RAN, should I use Open RAN or a traditional RAN, and what's the TCO analysis around that? They're really missing the bigger picture. Monetization of 5G is about deploying a virtualized network at the far edge of a service provider. Once you have that virtualized framework, effectively cloud all the way to the edge, you now have a platform that you can deploy advanced applications to monetize industrial, private 5G, medical, remote medical services, as well as the automotive example. And I think that's the key thing, is we want people to start thinking about Open RAN, not just about the infrastructure that deploys 5G, but as a platform that enables you to have a virtualized network to drive additional revenue generation for service providers.
A lot of the messaging was about how to make business out of 5G or out of the current network. I agree with other comments made. Possibly 5G was overhyped and overpromised, and that's a lesson as we move forward to other Gs, if we do so. Work with the network you have, work with the capabilities you're developing now, and don't wait for the next big thing. So a lot of the messages from the MWC floor was, we're working with partners, we're working with other industries, we're opening up our APIs so other people can develop apps on our networks, and basically find ways of bringing business revenue into the investment that has gone out on non-standalone 5G, standalone 5G. But definitely, it was one of the big three takeaways for me. It was, working and making money with 5G, looking at how we can open up APIs, as we mentioned earlier, and then sprinkling AI over everything like a magical dust. But certainly AI is part of the solution, but it's not the only solution to making money with 5G.
Yeah, bringing together the pieces of the 5G puzzle, that's the tricky bit for the industry, it would seem. Okay, fantastic. Guy, over to you for our next talking point.
Yep, thanks very much, Ray. Well, our next topic is the digital customer experience. And as you have done with our other topics, we have marked them in terms of our expectations and our views in retrospect post-show. And here's what the TelecomTV team thought. well, we had quite low expectations going in, and did they meet them? Just about, I would say. But most importantly, let's find out what our guests thought. And let's start by asking Salman.
Interesting topic. I felt, when we talk about digital customer experience, telcos have evolved from a kind of a supervision of a single super app to a much more grounded view of how to enable digital customer experience. And it's some foundational work. We are a network software player. We see that in our conversations with customers. So I think the base of it, everyone realizes, is a modernized application. So cloud being the foundation of that modernization. And then it's a lot about having an open ecosystem to enable that great experience, right? There's some good work done in the industry in terms of open APIs from TMF, and a lot of the tech players are embracing those APIs. But I think it has to go beyond that, and you could see some use cases around that, which is ability to onboard more and more digital lifestyle kind of experience partners into that ecosystem to enable that superb experience, and to do that in a seamless manner that it's not disruptive from experience perspective. So I think we are getting into that vision now, where we're using cloud as a foundation of a modern application that can scale up, that can open up to different partners in a more standardized manner.
This is not really my core area of research, but I think there were some interesting observations from my colleague John Abraham, who's looking at a whole digital enablement research stream. He definitely got a very different reaction from the business level, the business BSS level support systems about customer experience. A very much more positive, energetic part of the industry, in somewhat contrast to, say, when you get down to the network vendors and the equipment vendors associated with that, where there definitely is a little bit of flatness to the market at the moment, most notably actually shown by the recent announcement of the acquisition of Spirent by VRV, because there's nothing really happening in that part of the business. So I think there's definitely a much more upbeat area of interest from the market that we were picking up. I think there's a level of interaction which is we could be in danger of just repeating what we already do in customer experience, rather than this engagement with new markets, new experiences that was talked about earlier. I think that's going to be the key thing, is how do we engage beyond a refinement of what we already do in this area.
Great insights and observations. Thanks very much for those. Ray, I shall hand over to you for our next topic.
Guy, our next and our final topic is Barcelona after hours. The food, the drink, and of course the networking, the real reason for attending MWC. And it's amazing what you can find in Barcelona. It's not just sloppy tortilla and ham on. This year I picked up a Japanese chestnut Kit Kat. No idea where I got that from. Who knows what you're picking up at 2 o'clock on the Ramblas. That's 2 o'clock in the morning, of course, not the afternoon. Busy in the Fira at that point. But so Japanese Kit Kat this year. But, what were our expectations and our view in retrospect of Barcelona after hours this year? Let's have a look at our scores. Well, as usual, we're always looking forward to the networking and the after hours. And this year, well, it was even better than we expected. And that's the kind of score, that's the kind of retrospect we like to come away with. But what do our guests think about this year's experience? The after Fira, the evening network. Let's start with David. David, because I know you were a host on one of the evenings at MWC 24.
Certainly, Ray. I had the privilege of attending a wonderful party on the Tuesday night. That happens every year on the Tuesday night, and it embodied the good food, the good networking, and the relaxed times. And I think that's a bit of a message out of Mobile World Congress this year. People ran about and had lots of meetings, but in the evenings, there was some relaxation. One of the biggest problematics was, do you go to the cocktail on the UK pavilion? Do you go to the champagne tasting on the French pavilion? Do you go to the ETSI party? There was sometimes some conflict of after hours. But the essential thing was we did have some fun. We had some excellent food in Barcelona, as always, and had some really useful networking meetings, which result in lots of actions for the following weeks. So networking was 10 out of 10 for me.
Absolutely. I mean, 10 out of 10. Couldn't agree on that. Networking was fantastic. For me, one of the good things about these after parties during the MWC is they are hosted in some important locations, museums. So I had the privilege of going to two locations which were fantastic. One was the Barcelona Museum of Contemporary Art, and you kind of get a sneak peek of some of the work that is done there and on display. And the second one was the Gaudi's house, which was also fantastic. So from that standpoint, it was good to mix a lot of good food, a lot of great networking, and some great locations. So from that standpoint, 10 out of 10 for Barcelona.
I have to agree with my colleagues. It was 10 out of 10. I thought this year, especially, the weather was a treat. And coming back from Barcelona, it just felt like I didn't sleep for 4 days. I mean, you have long days, great conversations, but you just cannot miss getting together with friends and colleagues over tapas and drinks. So I didn't miss an opportunity. I got back very tired, but this is all good, right? So for me, it was a great experience.
I would say that from a social networking perspective, certainly it was great to catch up with many colleagues and customers, not just in the show itself, but in the evenings, whether it was on Saturday before we even got to the show, and Sunday while we had our partner reception. That many of our partners came, and it was really quite a great event. And then as we progressed through the week, it's the question of how many events can you go to in the same night. So definitely had a bit of that going on, but definitely some great places, some great food. Found one of the oldest restaurants in the Gothic Center, and a great discussion there with our customer. So I would say that that broad connection of the experience after hours made them very long days and evenings, but definitely well worth the time across the whole week.
I think we were really blessed to have the event in Barcelona. It's a tremendous city for this. This year we had some really mild weather, and if you remember last year it was freezing cold and rain. It was pretty difficult, but wonderful weather, great city, and then the attendance, right? To crack 100,000 at the show, we really had a significant presence. The executive networking events that happened, customer meetings, customer dinners every single night, even extending into Thursday. I'd say the old MWC is back, and a tremendous amount of connections and business and networking to be had at it. So really excellent show this year, and wonderful weather, and a great city to have it in.
Yeah, hard to have any complaints. Barcelona is one of my favorite cities in the world, and never fails to disappoint. So, like always, opportunity to connect with colleagues, folks that you've worked with in the past who you haven't often seen for a number of years, and you're all there. And I always really appreciate that opportunity with reconnecting with friends and colleagues from the industry that I've lost touch with. I think had the opportunity to do some great customer meetings in a more social context, which is always another benefit of MWC. And I will admit that I did manage to find one quieter evening where I got out of the city and out onto the outskirts and had a very quiet meeting with my dinner with my team one night, just to decompress after an incredibly busy show.
Yeah, I thoroughly enjoy Barcelona. It's as much a social experience as a technical experience. I particularly call out, and I'll make call out at an event before, and it was fantastic. It was I think the high point of the whole event. My shoulder is a lot better from skiing and a mountain bike injury before now. A low point, one cocktails where there was a 40-minute slide presentation. I think Cocktails are to chill, not to present content at. And with my colleagues, we had a great it's opportunity for Appledore as a global company to come together, and we've been doing some discovery of the local wine Priorat, and lots of drinking of that wine. And in fact, some of my colleagues went on a walking tour afterwards to the Priorat region to drink some more wine and eat some more great cheese.
Well, some great takeaways there, some pros and some cons. Big message out to the industry. If you're having an evening party, leave the slides at home. Okay, that's our magnificent 7 for MWC. I mean, we could have made it a much bigger number, but Hollywood references wouldn't allow us.
Yeah, nobody wants a magnificent 8, do they? That was our list. Any of our guests think of a topic that should have made it into the magnificent 7? Any other takeaways that any of you want to share now? Francis, let's come across to you.
I think the interesting one was energy sustainability was all over the show last year, and it almost seems to have completely disappeared from the show. I think that's quite interesting. Maybe it's hidden behind the AI and AI enabling it, but I think it's still an important subject, and it would be great to see a little bit more emphasis on that in future shows.
Yeah, I would agree that energy efficiency, sustainability was less evident this year than last year, but I think it's still there, it's still underground, it's still in the products, AI being used to enable more energy efficient radio antennas and such things. The one thing that stood out for me, maybe because I'm sensitive to it, is the non-terrestrial network. There was a lot of discussion around satellites, integration of satellites into mobile networks, satellite to net, satellite to device. GSMA did a very good session, which was oversubscribed. There were about 80 people standing outside peering in. So I think maybe for next year, satellites will be coming even further up the agenda. And that was a bit of a discovery for me this year.
Yeah, look, for us, I'd be really remiss if we didn't talk about what we saw around the momentum around private 5G. It was a year basically since we announced the acquisition of Ethernet. And so it was sort of a big deal show for us where we got to talk about the momentum that we've seen in the market. And plus, very, very pleasingly, Ethernet also walked away with 2 pretty big awards around quantum safe computing, which we've done with some partnerships there from a security point of view. But what we're really seeing is tremendous interest from both service providers and enterprises in private 5G and the sorts of problems it can solve around latency, security, mobility in areas which will be supplementing Wi-Fi and public 5G. And every customer engagement we had, even if that wasn't the main topic of discussion, it came around to them being interested in talking about private 5G, understanding the technologies. We're seeing a plethora of use cases for it. And so, just tremendously exciting to see the momentum there.
I don't think you actually overlooked it, but for me, the key takeaways from MWC this year is really Open RAN coming of age, right, after many years of investment, as we talked about earlier. But really that shifting to becoming really a software-defined infrastructure for the service provider. And we're now seeing deployments from the core of the network all the way out to the far edge, fully software-defined using technologies like Kubernetes and cloud-enabled infrastructure. And then the second piece really being, as we touched upon, the emergence of AI. And the reason for that is really driven by the need for automation in these networks. We have these hugely disaggregated, huge footprint networks with tens of thousands of sites that are really difficult for human beings to manage. And bringing automation and operations at scale into that world is, proving to be a critical need, because we're really past that point where we've proven that software-driven architectures can work for these, legacy technologies that used to be based on appliances. But operating them and integrating the multiple vendors and managing a network once it's in day 2 is a pretty significant challenge. And so we're really seeing the industry wake up to that. And so that's the one that we probably might touch on in the future, is really looking at operations at scale and management of these networks now that the technology is stable underneath them.
Well, I'm sure we could continue for much longer, but we do have to end the show here.
Yep, and that's it for this year, although people are already talking about MWC 25 and how that will take place in March next year. When will we all be sending our avatars to the show, I wonder? Well, I think 2025 might be a bit early.
Yeah, certainly is a bit early for us. Thank you to all of our guests. We had an absolutely packed programme today, and it's great to hear all of your views. Thanks so much, everyone, for taking part. Well, we'll try and do this again next year with the return of the 7. In the meantime, don't forget to join us later in the month for our very first Telco as a Platform Summit. But until then, thank you for watching and goodbye.
The after show was recorded in front of a live online audience.